guys, what's going on? It's If You Have to Pick Three. I'm Matt.
And I'm Zack.
If you haven't joined us for this show before, essentially what we're doing here is we are given a topic, and then we have to each come up with a top three list, and then from that list, we have to pick a final top three with hopefully some, sort of agreement, or if there's not, then there's going to be some bloodshed.
Definitely some broken hearts.
Yes, there's always that.
Metaphorically and literally.
All right, Zack, what are we doing today?
So, who doesn't love a good first album? Sometimes bands evolve after their first release. Sometimes the band's best work is the debut album. But there's something to be said about seeing how the band's first album really captures who they are. So we are going to be debating the three best debut albums of all time, that are not named Appetite for Destruction.
Yeah, Zack wanted this stipulation because I feel like we both would have put it on there, and it's just a slot that it doesn't need to be
I think
said.
If you look at almost every list on this topic, Appetite for Destruction is either number one or in the top five, maybe even top three. I think it just goes without saying that is one of the best albums of rock, let alone debut albums.
All right, I'm going first.
Well, I'm
going first!
I wasn't even done describing it, but fine. Go first, Matt. What are your three favorite debut albums?
That's right, you back down. All right. Number one, this album, if it wasn't made, there would be no Appetite for Destruction. There would
Bold words.
Very bold words because it's 100% true. Van Halen, number one. The very first one.
Mm-hmm.
Every single track on that album was a single. Every single one. And on top of it, it had the solo that ignited a generation of guitar players, including Slash. So if you do not include Van Halen's Van Halen on here, you're clearly wrong. Okay?
All right, well, that's the first one.
Number two is actually number 10.
Now you're just not making sense of the numbers. It's number 10.
Is 10.
Oh.
Pearl Jam's 10. That was so good you didn't even get it.
Continue.
Once again, this is another album that ignited, on top of everything else that happened at the time with the grunge movement, this ignited grunge to a whole nother level. Pearl Jam, with this, released a masterpiece of grunge music. Once again, every single one of the tracks on here, maybe you can make an argument about one or two of them, but every single one of them was either a single or a very solid song. The band, every time that I listen to this, I hear something different. And you can't say that about very many grunge albums because of the dual guitar work on this particular album. When you just listen to the work in the left channel versus the right channel, or what they're doing together, and how many just different parts there are to this masterpiece, there's just so many things that come together one way when you listen to it, and then come together a totally different way. And then Eddie Vedder on this album just sings his bloody head off. It is so good that I'm surprised that, and you can tell me if I'm wrong because I'm sure you've looked at more lists than I have, if this is not in the top five, that I don't know what those people are reviewing. Now.
All right, so third pick.
This one is going to be a little bit more controversial because as I'm going through and I'm trying to figure out what does a great debut album mean to me. A great debut album is in equal parts unexpected and masterful, and full of soul and full of presence, because that's what's going to launch the band for years to come. I went back and I was listening to Sabbath's original Black Sabbath album. It's good. Not really, off the charts great for me like the other two. And then I was just thinking about something that we recorded recently when we were talking about Rage Against the Machine. And how on their last album, The Battle for Los Angeles, that how just true they were. And that got me thinking, well, nobody really in that band Zach De La Rocha did not do much afterwards. He did a couple projects here and there. But the band and the music behind them that was just stellar work. So following that trend, I went and I re-listened to Audioslave, the first one.
Whoa. This is taking a weird twist that I was not expecting you to go in.
This is taking...
I thought wow, okay. Continue.
This is taking one of the best frontmen of all time, Chris Cornell, and throwing behind him a band that was arguably one of the hottest bands at the time. And you have a killer debut album that was unexpected and just very aware and very present when it came out. And it was, like I said, so unexpected for me, because when I heard it, like, you hear the very first song off of it was Code Cheese, and the riff to it, you're waiting and waiting and waiting. It's like, what is this? Who is this? Who's Audioslave? I don't remember if there was a lot of press behind Audioslave to announce. Was there to announce the band? I don't remember.
Huge press. So, sorry to interrupt your thing. It's interesting because that band almost imploded before they ever got started.
But
they were supposed to play, even before they had a band name, they were booked and announced to be the second headliner on Ozfest 2002.
mm-hmm.
And then I want to say a month or two before the tour was supposed to start, they pulled out. And that's kind of, if you look at like how System of a Down ended up becoming so huge, a lot of people tie it to Ozfest because they essentially took that slot. When they were supposed to be third on the bill, they became second on the second top bill, and they almost broke up. And then because they were it wasn't even necessarily that the internal tensions were between the band members. There's just misunderstanding with management. So that band almost didn't happen. And when they came out, it was a huge explosion.
Because once again, I wasn't that in tune with the press behind it all, but just for me, from a musical standpoint, like when I heard it for the first time, I was like, what am I listening to? Who is this? And then all of a sudden, it's Chris Cornell. And then it's Rage Against the Machine. And then it's different. And it's, wow, it's soulful. It's electric. It's just everything. The entire album for me, even if not every song on there was a single, like a Stone was on their Code Cheese. But I mean, I Am the Highway. That is such an amazing vocal performance. And then you also heard a side of the band in Rage Against the Machine that you never heard. Like, they never did anything like that before. And it just shows them in such a light that, I mean, I could not pick this as my third entry.
I gotta say, I think Audioslave, when they were a band, were so, I don't want to say overplayed, but if you look at like music award shows, they usually have a band on there to be the rock band of the evening. And I think Audioslave was usually the go-to for that slot on the shows. Their songs really had a huge presence on radio and whatnot, so much so that it took me a while to appreciate that first album, and to appreciate that band. And I think, sadly, shamefully, I admit this, that it really wasn't until Chris Cornell's death that I realized, man, I really took a band like Audioslave for granted. Because while certain songs on surface sounded a little radio friendly, for a band like that to get radio play at that time really was unique, or just unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Audioslave, or that album, definitely does get underrated, even though I'm gonna make an argument in a bit why that shouldn't be in the final three.
Well, you know what? Let's do it.
Yeah.
What's yours?
What is my three? Well, I'm already seeing the compromises I'm about to make with you. But sorry, but before I do, let's remind everyone, because
all right. So my three: Van Halen, Pearl Jam's 10, and Audioslave's Audioslave.
All right. So I'm gonna also just be completely honest with you. I initially had one of your albums on my list. Or as because I had the third slot, it's like, all right, it's either going to be this one or this one.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you've named it, I'm flipping it.
Okay.
I'm not going to tell you which one, though.
Oh, I could probably guess which one.
Nah, I think you'd be surprised, actually.
Yeah.
I think you're going to be...
All right.
All
right.
First one. Metallica's Kill 'Em All. I know that the band that Metallica is currently is not the band that recorded Kill 'Em All. And even by the time they did Ride the Lightning, they were a very different band. But there's something to be said about the technicality of Kill 'Em All, and yet the rawness, the hunger that's in that album. Kind of like how Eddie Van Halen, I'm going to make a bold statement, kind of like how Eddie Van Halen rocked the world with the Eruption guitar solo, Cliff Burton rocked the metal world with his bass solo in Anesthesia. It's such an amazing, it was, at the time it came out, it just turned so many heads. It was such, I mean, it's almost, I would make a bold statement that's probably going to get me so much crap, that it's the ultimate thrash record, in that it's got the rawness of punk, it's got the technicality of metal. It's just such an amazing metal record that Hardwired to Self-Destruct was definitely Metallica trying to capture some of that rawness with the more production of the Black Album, but I admit that they never had captured that same energy as Kill 'Em All, and there's something about that album that I still love, that I still holds dear to me, that when I first heard the drum intro to Motor Breath, and it just still makes me excited to hear it. It's still an exciting record that if you don't just start getting wild up, you probably don't have a pulse. You should probably see a doctor immediately. You just have no life in you left.
Okay.
So Metallica, Kill 'Em All. Second one. I'm not the biggest Korn fan. I like Korn. They definitely remind me of my youth when I thought Korn were the heaviest thing out there. Obviously, I was very wrong at a young age, but considering when you tuned into TRL, they definitely were the heaviest thing that was on TV. But there's something to be said about their self-titled debut. When it came out in 1994, 25 years ago, boom, making you feel old, it was such a unique sounding record. I think Korn get so looped into everything that's wrong about nu metal that they don't get enough credit for blending such different, not just styles of music, but tones of music with the self-titled debut, with just the extreme down tuning, with the scatting at certain points. Just it's a dirty sounding record, like really dirty sounding record that that at the time could have easily had them be played on alt rock radio, just like on metal radio, and just so happened as time went on they just got lumped into metal. But it really was such a different record that, for better or worse, led to a lot of copycats into what dominated the late 90s and early 2000s in rock radio, again, for better or worse. But it just doesn't get enough. When I hear a band like Deftones, no disrespect to Deftones, and they get so much praise and love. I was just
going to say the same exact thing.
Yeah, when they get so much praise and love, I'm like, yeah, but those same critics are the ones who shit on Korn. And yet that album, the self-titled album, it just shows how unique they were. And now, again, they really never did anything as revolutionary as that first album. They've had some fun songs, but I just think that album does not get enough credit. So that's number 2. The third, I am awaiting, Matt, for you to scream, what the hell? So I'm going to ask you.
It's all right. It's just something that won't make the top 3.
I already know it's not going to make the top 3. But I'm going to ask you to shut the hell up while I explain why I named this album as one of the greatest debut albums of all time. Actually, in fact,
you're switching again, aren't you?
No, I'm just making sure of something, and I'm just allowing you to kind of get settled in, because I know that
I'm already settled here. I've got my butt groove in the chair. I've got some popcorn. I'm just waiting on you.
Hot Fuzz by The Killers. Right now, if you can't see Matt's reaction, but it looks like he just sucked a really sour lemon. Hear me out. The Killers only really have 2 great albums. I'll be the first to admit that. But those 2 albums, Hot Fuzz included, I would argue are very underrated. The band is really a great pop alternative rock band with a lot of underrated talent. I love Sam's Town still, and I think that shows that their capability is even better, but Hot Fuzz really blended in a more rock-sounding David Bowie-esque kind of style of music. And something to keep in mind, Mr. Brightside is still one of the most played songs on the radio. It's still one of the biggest songs out there. I think in the UK it's still like a number one single. 15 years after, oh yeah, time to make you feel old, Matt. 15 years ago, this June, the Killers released Hot Fuzz. And I even went back to listen to it because I was like, oh, do I really want to include this on my list? But I went back and it really still, I mean, somebody told me, still has an awesome...
You had a boyfriend that looked like a girlfriend?
Maybe.
That I met in February of last year?
But it's still a fun song. Songs like it has a certain feel and vibe to it that it just is so awesome to listen to. And it was a refreshing kind of take on the genre back when it came out, and I think it still is an album that you listen to it, even though the Killers, frankly, had not released an album that matches those first two or that one. You listen to it and you still think, you know what, at least we got Hot Fuzz out of it.
Okay,
so I will say, like, I think its popularity might overshadow how good of an album as a whole it is, but I think it's worth still highlighting how, for an album that came out in the 2000s, it still is really phenomenal.
In terms of this list,
yes,
this debut album, it's got soul, but it is definitely not a soldier.
I don't even know what you're trying to reference there. Anyway.
And you listen to the album?
No, I know you're referencing the song. I don't know what point you're trying to make by referencing that song.
Yeah, it's good that it tried, but it is definitely not
going to be
contender.
It's not going to be in the final three. I admit that. So here's the compromise I'm going to make with you.
Go on.
I will give you 2 slots because I'm so kind.
Go on.
I will give you Van Halen.
Yes.
Which, by the way, a little plug here. A past episode of Am I Missing Something really goes deep into just how
we feel about Van Halen,
yeah,
Van Hagar.
And we touch upon how just, that particular album in general was so unique when it came out. So I will give you Van Halen, album number 1.
Mm-hmm.
I will give you Pearl Jam's 10.
Mm-hmm.
If you give me Metallica's Kill 'Em All.
I knew that was going to be your compromise. I knew it.
Yeah.
And here's my rebuttal to that.
No, shut up. There's no way you're going to tell me that Audioslave's self-titled debut is better than Kill 'Em All.
I will say...
Don't even dare.
And I will. And you want to know why?
No, don't you even dare.
Because Metallica, on that record, there is still a lot of controversy about, the writing and everything being somewhat influenced by Dave Mustaine at that point in time.
So what?
But here's going to be why I'm saying this, because Metallica didn't perfect Metallica until Ride the Lightning. And I think that it's a good album. I'm not going to argue that it's not a good album. I'm going to argue that in the scope of a debut album and being great, it is not one of the greatest of all time.
But I would argue that there are more better songs on that album. Even you admitted that there are some meh songs on the self-titled on Audioslave album.
I said once you get deeper into the album,
But there are so many great songs that are still staples. Even if Metallica might not have perfected Metallica until Ride the Lightning, there are still so many songs off that album that are still staples in Metallica's set list. And without Kill 'Em All, they wouldn't have made the progress into Ride the Lightning. Then go to Master of Puppets. You can't even look at me right now at he's looking down because he knows that you can't even make the claim that Audioslave should be in the 3 over Metallica's Kill 'Em All.
That's why I didn't pick Metallica's Kill 'Em All, because I don't want to come off as saying that it's one of the greatest of all time when I don't think that it is. Because you can make the argument that Sabbath's Sabbath helped influence Metallica, as well as Motorhead's debut stuff helped influence Metallica. But guess what? I don't think that they're one of the greatest of all time. I think, once again, for me, it's the unexpectedness of what I'm going to hear on the album. Metallica almost was a one-trick pony on Kill 'Em All.
I completely disagree.
I know you completely disagree. That's why we have this list. Metallica is one of my favorites of all time, and I'll be the first to admit that. But on Kill 'Em All, they were very one-trick pony. I think, like I said, when they got into Ride the Lightning and you start getting into Fade to Black and, they really start showing their chops on Call of Cthulhu, they start going deeper than just, I can thrash and play, a guitar and whatnot. The vocals on that are terrible. I'm sorry.
I'll give you the vocal part.
Vocals are awful. Like the echo that they have on Hetfield's voice on that album, it's because he wasn't a singer and he stepped up to try to sing until they could find a singer, and then guess what? He just became the singer and he became the voice of Metallica later down the line. It's not the greatest of all time.
I propose a compromise to you.
Are you going to tell me
yes.
that you're putting Hetfield's vocals on this against Chris Cornell? Come on.
I'll give you the vocal argument. And the songs itself, I still think are superior than Audioslave.
Ooh.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You're telling me that songs like Seek and Destroy, The Four Horsemen, are not as good as I Am a Highway or as Show Me How to Live? Come on.
Come on, broken clock is right twice a day.
What are you talking about?
Even a broken clock is right twice a day.
All right. I gave you a compromise.
And clearly, I don't like your compromise because I still think...
Do you...
granted, we're going a younger Metallica versus a more experienced Audioslave. Hands down, I completely see that. But my argument is still going to be for debuts and what is done on the debut. For Audioslave being together as short of amount of time as they were, they still, I think, did better than Metallica.
Couldn't disagree more. I can't. No. To me, the songs are just so much more superior on Kill 'Em All. To me, I would also maybe even argue that you're talking about One Trick Pony on Kill 'Em All. Audioslave, to me, most of the songs blend together.
Ooh,
I'm sorry, they do.
No, they don't.
They do. It's nothing. There's a few singles that stand out. Kill 'Em All from start to finish is a burst of adrenaline that just stands the test of time still. Whereas Audioslave, as much as I love it, it's just, no, you can't compare it.
Yes, I can. I clearly am right now.
No.
I honestly think...
I am going to give you one more chance before I'm about to say we're going to have a tie here for the third place.
I don't think so. See, now here's going to be my argument.
You're not going to win me over on the Audioslave.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
So, you've got...
And I think I'm being very kind by giving you two.
Well, hold on. We're talking, you didn't want to do Appetite for Destruction because that we both would agree on that. And I agree. But then you're going to tell me that Van Halen doesn't need to be on this list when they influence that album.
I completely told you that Van Halen's on the list, though.
Right,
Van
Halen's on the list. Okay, then Pearl Jam. You're going to tell me that masterpiece of a grunge album, that is so intricate from start to finish, that doesn't deserve to be on the list?
Hold on. Did I not just say that I agree that those two albums should be on the list? That they are on the list.
I don't think we need to tie this third spot. And if you're telling me that I'm not going to win the Audioslave argument, because
you're not going to win Audioslave. I'm sorry. I'm not allowing that on the list because I don't agree with that at all.
I know you don't. And I clearly think you're wrong.
Hold on. Maybe we do a wild card here, or something crazy.
Go ahead. What's crazy?
I know that we literally just said that Appetite for Destruction would not be on this list. How about we break some rules right now and
put
make
it on
the third spot Appetite for Destruction? I would be down to go just wild card here.
Or is there one more album that we can both pick, and that's going to take some other time to think about?
Well, I think it's fair to say that Korn won't be on. No. I don't over those two albums.
No way.
So here's an album that I was kind of going back and forth on.
Go on.
About including in the top three. Actually, so I'm going to suggest two potential replacements.
Go on.
The first one, this will be kind of quick to explain because you actually mentioned it when you were leading. This is the twist. I thought this is where you were going to go. I could agree to have Rage Against the Machine.
Okay.
In the final three, as almost as a compromise. Going back to us talking about Battle of Los Angeles, how it's a great album in a past 2 minutes review, which you can listen to on YouTube, Libsyn, iTunes, Spotify, etc. Plug. Rage Against the Machine was such a unique, intricate album that you could maybe even argue Rage Against the Machine really influenced the genre-bending style that influenced the rest of the 90s. And with that album in particular, I mean, that album still holds up.
Yes.
So I could be convinced to have that. And that could almost be a kind of fair compromise, too. Mm-hmm. So there's two of the albums that we're talking about.
Okay. And what was the other one?
This one's kind of neither of us mentioned, but you could make an argument that this particular album really did influence, I would say, maybe 4 out of the 6 bands that we mentioned.
Johan?
Ramones' self-titled album.
The Ramones, huh?
That particular first album, I mean, that was a rock album that was just sped up and really created what we now know as punk. Blitzkrieg Pop. Such an incredible song that's still blasted all the time. 53rd and Third, and a song that doesn't get enough credit either for just capturing how tight of a band they were.
You know what? I would be down to go with the Ramones.
Yeah?
Just because neither one of us mentioned it. It's a completely neutral ground. And the Ramones were widely influential. And that album, is a great one. I have it downstairs in a frame because I love the cover.
All right.
There we go.
So, in what will not become a tradition.
No.
In future, if you have to pick 3 episodes, out of nowhere, Dark Horse just came out of nowhere, and it's going to now be Van Halen's Van Halen.
Pearl Jam's 10.
Pearl Jam's 10, which, side note, was the album I was going to have on my list too before you named it.
Yeah.
It is a great album. It's just so great. It's actually remarkable to think that was a debut album.
Yes, absolutely.
It's phenomenal. And then 3, the Ramones' self-titled album.
Boom.
Oof, can you... Oh, I have a lot of... Oof, I do not envy for all the blood that you have to clean up in this room.
Yeah.
This was a brutal one. Mm-hmm. Now it's time for you to tell us where we were wrong. Maybe tell Matt that, he was wrong about Kill 'Em All. Maybe tell me where I'm wrong about Audioslave. Let us know what you think on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Epic Footnote. Thanks so much for listening, and we hope that you join us for another episode where it's going to be hopefully a little less vicious than this one.
I think it's more fun when it's vicious.
Yeah, fair enough. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy.